Well, hello, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you are in the world listening to us, but this is our live Trump 100 Q&A session. I'm Mark Stone, and I'm joined by our colleague here, David Blevins.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again. We did this last week, didn't we, you and I?
We did.
So,
we're making a habit of it.
Yeah, no, it's good. And it's a good time of the week to sit back, take a breath, and I tell you, I need a breath after this week. I only remembered this morning that Monday was the day Netanyahu came back here to DC for his second visit, and that seems like a long time ago already. It's been a long week, but let's get into it. David, I've got a question for you here. We've had lots of questions this week about allegations of insider trading, or whether Trump and his people, the people in his orbit, benefited financially from the reversal of trade policy. So Scott has asked if Trump messages on Truth Social that now is a good time to buy shares, then makes a presidential decision that clearly intends to raise the share price. Is that insider trading, and is there any way to tell what big investors made money from that? We've had loads of questions around this.
Yes, and I think those questions are fueled largely by the fact that the president posted those comments just moments before he did his handbrake turn, reversed in terms of the tariffs for most places.
And he added a hashtag, didn't he? Hashtag DJT.
Of course, and then
which is his initials, but also something else.
By reversing, he sent the markets skyrocketing, and that's why people are asking this question. I think it's also fueled the question by the mixed messaging we've had all week around all of this. From Caroline Levitt, his press secretary, saying people like you and me missed the art of the deal, and we had Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, suggesting that this had been the plan all along. But then Kevin Hassett, his economic advisor in the White House, said actually what was going on in the bond market may have contributed to his decision, and the president himself described his decision as instinctive. And he said it was because people got yippy, got jumpy about what was going on in the markets.
Word of the week, yippy.
So we've had this very mixed messaging, and that's confusing people. And then we got this video emerging from the White House, which appeared to show the president boasting about how much people around him had made. So that's why you've got senators like Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, Adam Schiff from California now calling for a formal investigation into the suggestion that there has been market manipulation. And I think it's going to be up to Congress to decide if that investigation takes place.
Kicked into the long grass, maybe?
As happens with a lot of things around Donald Trump.
What is the case, though, is that I'm not sure Donald Trump made his reversal from the heart. I think it has become increasingly clear that if he was willing to ride out the stock market turbulation, it was the bond markets that really spooked him, and Scott Bessent, the people around him, went to Mar-a-Lago last weekend. There were, I think maybe you could describe them as crisis talks, and that prompted the change of tack there.
Mark, we've got a question still on tariffs. This one from Tom. He says, does the current tariff conflict between the US and China increase or decrease the likelihood of actual war, with China invading Taiwan?
It's a good question. I was talking to our Asia correspondent in Beijing, Helen Ann Smith, about this the other day. The background first, according, as far as the Chinese are concerned, as far as Xi Jinping is concerned, and the Chinese Communist Party, Taiwan is the renegade province. It's where the nationalists retreated back in 1949 with the Communist Party takeover of the mainland. And ever since, successive Chinese leaders have had their eye on taking Taiwan back. I guess Xi Jinping, the current president, is being more vociferous in his desires for Taiwan than anyone before him. So that's the background. Now to the question, is China more or less likely to make a move on Taiwan now? It's hard to tell. That there are different ways of looking at this. First of all, this trade war that's ongoing with China is going to hurt the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy is already not doing particularly well. Wars cost money, a lot of money. Invasions cost money. So I think you could argue that maybe now is not, for China economically, the right moment to make a move. On the other side, though, is it maybe a distraction to bolster national strength? unity, bringing the greater China back together again. I'm not convinced. I think stability is paramount for China, for the Communist Party. They don't need a war on top of the economic chaos that they are facing at the moment. And remember that Xi Jinping has time. He plays a really, really long game. Why rush? Why do it now? I'm interested to know what how this all feels from Trump's perspective. Does Trump's unpredictability, and we know he's unpredictable, we've seen that in the past week, does that make it less likely that China would roll the dice on Taiwan? Yes, because I think they just don't quite know how Trump would react. But what I do think is that Donald Trump can quite easily argue to his base, why care about Taiwan? It's not our issue. He isn't remotely ideological when it comes to geopolitics. He thinks in spheres of influence. He sees Taiwan as part of someone else's sphere of influence, the Chinese one, not our issue. I can see him easily persuading his base that Taiwan has nothing to do with them. On balance, I think that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is not imminent, but who knows? Who knows? What have we got here? Charlie S. asks, does Trump know what he's doing long term, or is he just feeling his way by trial and error with the world economy?
Well, Donald Trump's love affair with tariffs is nothing new. He's been talking about them for decades. During the campaign, you covered it a lot, Mark. He repeatedly described tariffs as the most beautiful word in the dictionary. He has changed his mind a little on that. He now says it's his fourth favourite word behind love, God and family.
I missed that.
Yeah, but he's still committed to the concept. Way back in 1987, in an interview with Larry King Live on CNN, Donald Trump, the businessman, long before he expressed any political aspirations, talked about America being ripped off. And here we are 38 years later, and that's still the kind of rhetoric we're hearing from him. So he has this innate conviction that tariffs is the solution to America's economic woes. The other thing I think that's been interesting recently is how much he's been quoting former President William McKinley, a man with a real passion for territorial expansion. Did someone say Canada or Greenland?
Panama Canal.
Yeah.
The McKinley Doctrine.
And a man with also a passion for economic protectionism. Trump says McKinley made America very rich through tariffs and talent. I wonder, was that the inspiration behind Make America Great Again?
Maybe.
A question on US international standing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we've had a few of these coming in. Bill wants to know, do you have any reporting or opinions on whether other countries will also be happy to return so easily to a business as usual posture with the United States? Or did the American policy changes of late permanently change our trading relationships?
I was talking to Britain's former ambassador to the US, I think it was last weekend. You can go back and listen to that conversation. I think it's Monday's episode. But he had a point that I've heard quite a lot recently, is that we are crossing a Rubicon with global relations with the United States. I think this episode with tariffs has reduced trust. I think it's dented America's reputation. It's accelerated the desire, I think, for countries to decouple their economies to the extent that they can from the United States. It kind of adds to the geopolitical decoupling that is happening already with Europe in terms of the military, NATO, Europe recognizing that it cannot potentially cannot rely on America militarily. So relationships are really changing, and as the former US ambassador, UK ambassador to America said, we're crossing a Rubicon. And we're not necessarily going to go back to the way things were. Now, the specifics of the question, I think this crisis, Trump's tariffs, will have different impacts on different countries. Take the UK, for example. We have wanted a trade deal or an economic deal with the United States ever since Brexit. It's been very hard to achieve. It's something that the Brits have been trying to engage the Americans on, but haven't really got anywhere. This episode has kind of forced the issue. It's enabled the UK to get traction with the United States, to get offers underneath Trump's nose. It's happening right now. This will require concessions, probably more concessions from the UK than from the United States. But from a UK-US trade perspective, it's kind of good news if they can get some sort of a trade deal. More broadly, the EU, from the EU to China, I think economists are assessing the impact of Trump's rupture. I think it will be greater potentially on the American economy than it will be on their own. That's certainly the view of economists, that it will damage, all this will damage America more than it will damage them, but it will still hurt them. This pause that we've got now, 90 days, gives EU officials an opportunity, I think they think, to work out what next, to put in place some protectionist moves, but also to find space to find a deal with Donald Trump, which won't be what he wants. It won't bring American manufacturing back, but it will allow both sides to move on.
So a trade deal offered in one envelope, sweetened by an invitation for a state visit from the King in another envelope.
Yeah, for the Brits, for sure, yeah. Now, where are we? Another one here. Pete asks, what do you think will be the likely effect of the current administration's actions on tourism to the United States, which countries will it affect the most? Certainly when I was in Canada, says Pete, in February, there were reports that they were reporting a drop in demand in flights to the United States. Well, Canada, many Canadians come to the UK, to the US, or did. We were talking to Martha Kellner from Las Vegas a couple of days ago, and she was saying that Canadian tourist numbers there are down a lot.
Even before Trump took office, the US travel industry was struggling to recover from the global pandemic. That's partly because of the strength of the dollar, of course, which makes it expensive for foreign travellers to visit. But foreign visitor spending was not projected to fully recover until 2026. Add into the mix then a new administration, and the research firm Tourism Economics, which had originally forecast travel to grow by 9% this year, revised its figures in February, just a month after Donald Trump became president again, and it updated the outlook, forecasting inbound travel to decline by 5.1% and hotel demand to go down by 0.8%. To put that in real money terms, that's an $18 billion drop in spending. Much of it, as you say, is because of protest from Canadian visitors, protesting about tariffs, protesting about the president's repeated call for Canada to become the 51st state. But Mark, I've been here for a while now. I've had people ask me if they come to visit this summer, are they going to be detained at the border over some minor parking offence they committed in their youth? That's how unwelcoming America feels right now to many people.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But I think tourism numbers will be down, for sure.
A question from Jamie. With the state of the economy and the US getting itself more and more into financial turmoil, can they not impeach Trump and stop the USA getting into recession/deep recession?
Well, they could if they wanted to, but the politicians on Capitol Hill, they don't want to. Remember, Trump's Republicans have the majority in both houses of Congress. That will be the case up until the midterm elections. They are loyal to him. Yes, there have been some real jitters over the Trump tariff stuff, but they're still not willing to overrule him. And remember, they have the ability to, if they want to. Fiscal policy is something that doesn't necessarily need to be in the hands of the executive branch of government, in the hands of the White House. They could overrule him, but they've chosen not to. They've given him authority over this issue. So for the moment, Trump feels like he has the ability to do this, and he's been given free rein to do it.
Incredible, really.
Yeah. Now, Matt asks, Are the protests a sign of Americans waking up to what Trump is doing at home and internationally? I've always struggled to see how everyday Americans have felt that Trump is the best person to represent their circumstances and to improve their lives. Trump couldn't be further removed from a regular person's circumstances and would not know what everyday Americans face in their reality.
I don't think the protests are a sign of revolt, because for every person you find protesting, you'll find another who is championing Trump's agenda. The protests are just an illustration, as if we needed another one, of just how polarised this nation is. I covered the protests here in Washington DC last Saturday, about 20,000 people on the National Mall, and there were 1,200 other demonstrations in cities across every state. In fact, people conceded to me that while they were frustrated about what was going on within the administration, they felt helpless. Frustrated to such a point that one man had come to DC from Hawaii. He told me he won the long distance award. I checked later, that's about 3,715 miles. That's a lot of frustration over the administration. But they feel that they are limited in what they can achieve because of the fact that Trump has the White House, has the House of Representatives, also has the Senate. But whether you agree with the protesters or not, you have to admire their creativity in terms of their posters and placards. Let me give you just some examples. I was accidentally added to this protest by a Signal group chat, a reference to the fact that a journalist had been accidentally added to a Signal group chat by senior officials discussing military action. Grab him by the testicles.
That's a goodie.
Of course, a reference to comments the president once made about females.
Yeah.
And this one was my favourite. 6 weeks into this dictatorship, that's how the woman was describing it, and I'm using the F word like it's a comma. I think we can get away with that.
Very good.
How many times has Trump gone bust? Bon Scott asks.
Yeah, good question. I had to look this one up. 6 times. Over the years, he has filed for bankruptcy. His Taj Mahal casino opened in 1990 in Atlantic City. 6 months later, he defaulted on payments and bankruptcy followed. 2 other Atlantic City casinos, they both declared bankruptcy in 1992. A 4th property at the Plaza Hotel in New York declared bankruptcy again in 1992. Trump's hotels and casinos filed for bankruptcy again in 2004 after racking up debt as well. So 6 times in total he has declared bankruptcy.
It's a very wet day on the East Coast. I bet the sun's shining in California. And we've one last question from Peter. He asks, could a state declare independence from the US? California maybe?
Well, remember, America's fought a civil war over this one, and no, a state can't declare independence. The Constitution does not allow for secession. There's no mechanism for it, no provision for a state to be autonomous within the United States. But Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has been looking at ways to try and shield himself and his state, which, remember, is, if it was a country, the 5th largest economy in the world, to shield it from this tariff buffeting. He tweeted the other day, to our international partners, as the 5th largest economy in the world, the Golden State will remain a steady, reliable partner for generations to come, no matter the turbulence coming out of Washington. California, he said, is not Washington, DC. And more recently, after Trump flipped and blinked on the tariffs, Gavin Newsom said, Trump caved, he will change his mind again. To our international partners, California is a stable, reliable partner. We want your business. It's particularly exposed, as I said, the world's 5th largest economy. Countries are finding it hard to get traction with the White House as they try and negotiate deals, but they kind of have an open door in California. The problem for California and those other countries is if they try and do separate deals, economic deals, then they're going to deepen the rift with Donald Trump. For California, he could cut federal funding programs, for example. There are specific exemptions. California is trying to persuade other countries to not target its exports. So wine from California, for example. Gavin Newsom is talking directly to countries saying, don't target in your retaliatory tariffs, don't target our products, target products that come from from more Republican states. So he's trying to examine avenues where he can, protect his own state, really.
Perhaps California could sell Washington some sunshine with a whopping great tariff on the top.
Yeah, we could do with it today, looking out the window. It is miserable. Where is spring? Anyway, that is all we've got time for. Thank you for joining us for this live Q&A episode. We will do another one next week. Do keep sending us our questions. Trump100 at sky.uk.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot.